In this lecture segment, we are introducing Islamic art and focusing on the Dome of the Rock and its connections to other art made at this time. Islam means surrender and is the name for the religion that was founded by Muhammad, who was born in 570 CE in Mecca. To help you place this in time, Justinian dies in 565. Muhammad has a good life, he's successful financially, but when he's 40 years old, an angel appears to him and calls him to be a messenger of God, and he receives revelations from this angel. When those revelations are written down, they are called the Quran, meaning recitation. And in contrast to Christianity, with a Bible that has been translated many times through multiple languages, the Quran and its Arabic text has been relatively stable over the course of the history of Islam. As Christianity is often viewed as the culmination of Judaism, Islam was seen by Muslims as the fulfillment of the prophecies and doctrines of Christianity and Judaism. In Islam, Jesus is accepted as a prophet but is not divine. Islam spread very quickly through military expeditions, and within 100 years of Muhammad's death, much of the area that we have studied in this class is under Muslim authority, as you can see in this map. It develops and moves more quickly than Christianity did, which might explain why it is so anxiety-producing for Byzantine authorities. You can see in the map that Islamic control is spreading to Byzantine-held areas. The 5 key principles of Islam include praying 5 times a day and going on a pilgrimage to Mecca, the most sacred city in Islam. The demands of art in Islam are different than those that we see in Christianity. In Christianity, people need spaces to gather and receive the Eucharist. Muslims need spaces to come together for prayer, especially for Friday prayers. While in Christianity we have patens and chalices and garments that priests would wear for the performance of the Mass, in Islam we have carpets for the floors of mosques where worshippers pray, as well as vessels for light so that the interior spaces of mosques could be well lit for masses of people coming to pray on Fridays in huge congregational worship, as the first and last prayers of the 5 daily prayers occur without sunlight. We also see a very direct relationship between the individual and God, and do not have the intercession like we've talked about with the Virgin and Child icon. This slide shows you 2 mosaics that are very similar, but one of them is from a Byzantine structure and one is from an Islamic structure. In Islamic art, sacred structures are not to have depictions of the human figure, as such forms were considered inappropriate for that context. This varies a little bit over the history of Islamic art. However, secular Islamic art is filled with human figures. Sacred Islamic art is aniconic, meaning no images or no human figures. In religious Islamic art, imagery usually uses organic forms like vines and leaves, geometric patterns, and text, and the words of the Quran, transformed into patterning and decoration. So the Byzantine image is the one on the right, and the Islamic image is the one on the left, based on the presence of human figures. Another important lesson from this pairing is about the visual traditions on which Islamic art is based. In the same way that early Christian art was based on Roman art, Islamic art is based on Byzantine art, as Byzantine culture was the dominant force in this area of the world, and there is extensive contact between Byzantine culture and Islamic culture. The Byzantine emperor sent gifts of mosaics and mosaicists, or artists who make mosaics, to Muslim leaders. So like we saw at Dura Europos, we'll see a similar back and forth in Byzantine and Islamic art as their structures are designed and decorated. We are going to use the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem to help us transition into Islamic art. The Dome of the Rock is the oldest surviving Islamic building in the world. It is on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which is a highly contested piece of land sacred to Muslims, Jews, and Christians. About 50 years before the Dome of the Rock was built, Jerusalem came under the control of a caliph, an Islamic ruler. The caliph was the patron of this structure on the Temple Mount, which in essence claims the sacredness of this location for Islam and makes a statement about which of these 3 religions is supreme. It is a structure about the triumph of Islam over Christianity and Judaism, but as we'll see, the visual language used to make these statements of triumph is Byzantine. The structure is an octagonal building that bears great similarity to San Vitale from 150 years earlier. Both are centrally planned buildings and began their lives with relatively plain exteriors. The Dome of the Rock was not initially covered in tile as it is today, but instead had a plain exterior similar to the brick exterior of the Church of San Vitale. Both structures include a central dome that was intended to provide a connection between the mortal world and the heavenly world, and create an otherworldly or heavenly space suitable for religious worship. The dome at the Dome of the Rock is designed differently than what we see at San Vitale or the Hagia Sophia, and uses a different architectural approach to produce a similar heavenly space. Both structures, as you see here, have richly decorated interiors. There is another precedent to the Dome of the Rock, a church just a stone's throw away from the Temple Mount, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, originally commissioned in the 4th century by Constantine to mark the supposed site of Christ's burial. It was also a centrally planned structure, but its dimensions match the Dome of the Rock almost exactly. So the Caliph is not just associating the Dome of the Rock with Christian structures, but connecting himself with Constantine, whether through rivalry or emulation. There were conscious and purposeful links between the design of the Dome of the Rock and Christian structures related to the power of the Christian Roman Empire. In this cutaway of the Dome of the Rock, you can see that the central space created underneath the dome is surrounded by a double ambulatory that would allow worshippers at the site to circumambulate. We do think that circumambulation, or walking around in a circle, was one of the religious practices that occurred at this structure historically. This is also a practice at Mecca, where worshippers walk around the Kaaba, a sacred shrine, as part of their religious practice during the Hajj or annual pilgrimage. The interior of the structure is richly decorated with a variety of materials: spoliated columns, capitals, and reliefs reused from churches in Jerusalem, marble revetment, some of which are also spolia, and gold-backed mosaics with designs that create an elevating paradise. The mosaics you see here were made by artists trained in the tradition of Byzantine mosaicists, and they may very well not have been Muslims. The mosaics employ the medium, technique, and style of the Byzantine Empire that was used in Byzantine churches. This is similar to what we saw at Dura Europos, when similar media and style were used to decorate structures of worship for multiple religions. The interior of the structure is filled with pattern, especially vegetal forms that suit a structure for an aniconic religion, but also includes inscriptions demonstrating the importance of the word in both the religion of Islam and Islamic art. At San Vitale, we did see patterning, but we also saw depictions of human figures. Here at the Dome of the Rock, the overall program is one of paradise, life, and growth without figures. In this view, we look down onto the rock that the dome protects. A band of text runs around the central domed space. Some of the decoration was added later, but some of the inscriptions that date from the time of the construction discuss the supremacy of Islam and encourage Christians to convert, another piece of evidence that this structure was in part about positioning Islam in relationship to Christianity. This natural outcropping of rock has a sacred grotto within it and is traditionally thought of as the place where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac in the Jewish tradition, or Ishmael in Islam, where Adam was created by deity, and where Muhammad ascended to take a divine journey. So it is a sacred space that is a conduit between the earthly realm and the heavenly realm. We have a vertical that runs from the top of the dome down through the sacred rock, a link between man and deity. And the dome is part of what allows this connection between the earthly realm and the heavenly realm. The dome helps to facilitate the transporting of the viewer from the earthly realm into a heavenly world, helping the viewer have a spiritual experience, surrounding the viewer with a feeling of paradise. Instead of being used for popular worship, scholars think that the Dome of the Rock was a shrine intended to protect, mark, and potentially to claim this location as a religious site belonging to Islam, to show the victory of Islam. As we've talked about, Islam had a great deal of success politically, militarily, and religiously. The clear connection between the form, design, and overall feeling and viewer experience of the Dome of the Rock with Byzantine churches indicate an effort on the part of Muslim designers to show the triumph of Islam over Christianity.